60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we look at who should be held accountable for mass school shootings in the United States. For the past 2 weeks, that question has played out in a courtroom in Barrow County, Georgia.
This case is about this defendant and his actions.
Prosecutors have charged Colin Gray, the father of a 14-year-old who was accused of carrying out a deadly shooting at Appalachia High School in 2024, killing 4 people. It was Colin Gray, prosecutors say, who ignored warning signs about his son's mental health and bought his son an AR-style rifle that was used in the attack.
He should have known his son would, not could, that his son would harm someone.
The case is the latest attempt to hold a parent responsible for a child's school shooting. The approach drew national attention in 2024 after the parents of the shooter at Oxford High School in Michigan were each convicted and sentenced to at least 10 years in prison.
The guidelines do not take into account the complete lack of insight both defendants have for their behavior to this very day.
In both the Georgia and the Michigan cases, investigators say there were warning signs from the shooter well before the crime.
But yeah, that was actually really interesting, the way that data has kind of played out.
James Densley and Gillian Peterson are professors of criminology and founders of the Violence Prevention Project, a St. Paul, Minnesota-based nonprofit that studies mass shootings.
We had the original mass shooter database.
Densley and Peterson have interviewed mass shooters themselves and people who knew them. Did you ever say to any of these mass shooters, could somebody have stopped you?
That was one of the questions I asked every time. Is there anyone or anything that could have stopped you? And every person we talked to said yes. One of them even said, I think anyone could have stopped me.
These are not young people who are criminal masterminds. These are crimes that are rooted in despair. And it is that despair that spills over to such a point that the only solution that they can see to the problem is to pull the trigger and commit this horrific act of violence.
Densley and Peterson have spent the last 10 years researching hundreds of mass shootings, trying to better understand the shooters themselves and their pathways to violence. Through their work, Densley and Peterson saw patterns emerge among mass school shooters.
What gets a young person to that point? What gets them to that point is horrific trauma early in life, whether that is abuse within the home or bullying. But these things start to overwhelm that young person's character that drives them to all this. And not only that, these young people usually have had a helping hand in this as well, because somebody on the internet has told them it's a good idea, or because a parent has negligently left a firearm lying around in the home that they can get access to.
The data shows that there are patterns, and this could be preventable. Why are we not stepping in and doing something in this moment?
We're still in a mindset that this is the monster and that it's not my problem, because the monster is not my child or my student or my colleague or classmate, whatever it is. It's somebody else's.
What's the problem with labeling mass shooters as monsters?
There's a couple problems. One is that if you see it that way, there's really nothing we can do, right? The best thing we can do is fortify our schools and train our children how to run and hide and fight. But the other problem is you don't see the people in your life that could be going down this pathway, because, you know, the kid sitting next to you in class is not a monster. He's the kid next to you in class, but he could be thinking about this. He could be sucked into spaces online that are celebrating this. He could be lost and alone and suicidal. But because you can't imagine him as a monster, there's no reason to intervene or report or seek help. And so part of our messaging is like, we have to start recognizing that the people who do this are people, and they could be somebody in your life. And so you kind of have to be aware of that.
If you know that these are the things that we should be looking for, what can we as a society be doing to prevent it?
There's a lot of things that we can do, like from early childhood trauma screening, crisis intervention in schools, school-based mental health, suicide prevention, I think is huge. If you want to live, you're not going to do this. Also thinking about these online spaces where young men are spending time and how we better help young people navigate those, or even how we hold social media companies responsible for those spaces.
Do you think we'll see more parents charged after a mass shooting if their child's the shooter?
I do think we're going to see more parents getting charged. I think it's a recognition that when a 15-year-old does something like this, they don't exist in a vacuum. They have people who are in charge of them. And I think recognizing that if you have a young person crying out for help, asking for mental health care, you're telling school officials are asking for help, and you're buying them a gun and taking them to a shooting range, yes, you have played a role in this.